The Catholic Church said that it is overwhelmed with the amount of exorcism requests it's been receiving lately, and there's some pretty sad stories about it. The article says that exorcists in Rome have been seeing up to 30 to 50 cases per day, and that includes the story of this young woman who was in a church where she started having a meltdown. She was jumping over pews and she even assaulted a monk. Her father claimed that she was having a mental health crisis, but her mother said that she was possessed. The priest ended up siding with the mother and performed a 9-hour exorcism on the girl, which he claimed was successful. The church claims it's able to distinguish between mental health and demonic possession, saying that demonic possession usually includes symptoms such as unusual strength or being able to speak ancient languages without previously knowing them. But what do you think? Is this a mishandling of a mental health epidemic, or is it something supernatural?
Watch these to find out they might get life in prison.
What they call felony murder, while in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of child abuse in the first degree, they're alleging that you murdered one Mary Welch. That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole. It requires a DNA sample to be taken upon arrest, which is often like a cotton swab or in the inside of your cheek. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment or any term of years less than life. Now those are the two separate felony charges.
This is the scariest story about the lunch lady. There was a lunch lady named Judy, and everybody in the school loved her. But they loved her food even more. Every single day they would all run to the lunchroom just to eat her delicious food. But one day, a young boy in 7th grade noticed something extremely strange. In the back of the kitchen, he saw a mysterious door he never seen before. And he's been buying lunch every single day for a year straight. He then went to the principal's office and told him what he saw. The principal then made his way down to the lunchroom and asked Judy about the door. She played dumb for a couple minutes, but eventually ended up showing him. And what he saw inside made him freeze in complete horror. Inside were multiple children's dead bodies, completely cut up and strung up on the wall like animals. Judy then looked at the principal with a smile on her face and said, "How do you think my food tastes so good?" This is the reason why. Judy was then arrested and fired. Judy is now serving 105 years in prison. But the crazy part is, how did this school allow a lunch lady to kill all these students and then sell their meat as lunch food?
2 other 10-year-olds I don't even know kidnapped, tortured, and murdered me. My name is James Patrick Bulger. I was 2 years old and died on February 12, 1983. My mother Denise Fergus and I were out shopping that day. While we were in the aisles of a store, my mother let go of my hand for a very brief moment. Due to a slight lack of attention on her part, she noticed that I had disappeared. Then our 2 10-year-olds, Robert Thompson and John Venables, came up to me and took me by the hand. Because of my young age, I didn't understand what was happening. Several people must have seen the scene, but no one reacted when I was kidnapped. They took me to a railroad track where there was no one around. They started beating me and allowed all the atrocities they did to me. They threw bricks and rocks at me. They also hit me on the head with an iron bar. And worst of all, they put batteries in my mouth. Then they asked me to undress so they could hit my private parts and inserted objects into my anus. After they'd finished playing with me, they placed me on the railroad tracks so that a train would run over me and make it all look like an accident. The 2 boys who assaulted me were convicted of murder in 1993 and sentenced to indefinite detention. They were released under new identities as adults. Do you think their judgments were correct?
This woman vanished on a yoga retreat, and this eerie image is the last known photo of her. On the 19th of October 2023, Nancy Ng was at a yoga retreat. Nancy is 29 years old from California and had been at the retreat at Lake Atilan in Guatemala. On the day in question, she disappeared while taking a kayaking trip with some others from the retreat. Nancy and another person who was at the retreat broke away from the group and began paddling about a mile into the lake. The woman that she was with is the last known person to have seen Nancy. The woman in question has spoken out through her attorney, stating that they happened upon each other while they were in the lake and began to chat to each other. While out in the water, she said that Nancy decided she wanted to go swimming. She claims that she tried to stop Nancy doing this due to the rough nature of the water and the current. The woman states that Nancy ignored her warnings and got into the water and managed to push her kayak away. This woman states that she tried to retrieve the kayak by keeping one leg in her boat and another in the other kayak. She said she got close to the swimmer and managed to push it back to her. She said she then actually lost the kayak again, and after turning around to try and get it, Nancy was apparently gone. She claims that she went to go and get help and a distress call was put out. Search and rescue teams have unfortunately had no luck in finding the missing woman. This man did to the mother of his unborn baby is truly horrific. Vanessa Pierre was 29 years old and expecting a baby girl. She was 6 months pregnant and had even picked out a name for her baby daughter. Her life was looking exciting until a horrific event on the 23rd of October 2020. It was 2:50 a.m. and Vanessa was in the car with her boyfriend Goey Charles. Now he is currently 33 years old, and as the pair were travelling in the white Dodge Challenger, he suddenly pulled over. They were on the side of the Horace Harding Expressway in Queens, New York. Now it's unknown what went on in the car for the next 40 minutes, but he got out of the driver's seat after that and into the back seat with Vanessa. Horrifically, he callously strangled the mother of his unborn baby to death. He stayed in the back seat with Vanessa's body for around an hour, and just after 4:30 a.m, he got out the car and dumped her lifeless body by the roadside. She was left there with a pair of grey tracksuit bottoms around her neck. It was around 6 a.m. that morning that a bus driver noticed Vanessa's body on the side of the road. Emergency services raced to the scene, but she was pronounced dead. Her murder was captured on CCTV footage, helping bring her killer to justice. Shockingly, in the US, almost 20 people are abused by a partner per minute. Goey was charged with second-degree murder and is due to be sentenced at the end of this month. He could get 25 years in prison.
Mysteriously died in my hot tub after a pickleball game. A tranquil scene turned tragic. My name is Matthew Perry, but you probably remember me as the sarcastic yet lovable Chandler Bing from Friends. Embodied in a character known for his sarcastic humor and awkward charm, I navigated the maze of adulthood alongside my close-knit group of friends. Week by week, we unraveled the knots of life together, delivering laughter and comfort right to your living room. As Chandler, my quirky humor became a beacon of light in the often tumultuous sea of life, providing a chuckle when needed the most. The coffeehouse chatter, the Thanksgiving fiascos, and the endless camaraderie weren't just episodes. They were moments we lived together. Away from the screen, my life had its share of storms. Battling addiction, I hoped my journey could serve as a beacon for others facing similar struggles, to help find light amidst the shadows. On that unforeseen October day, as the soothing waters of my hot tub embraced me, my story met an unexpected pause. Yet, the legacy of laughter, friendship, and the many heartwarming moments we shared on screen live on. Now, as I bid farewell, I leave behind a character cherished by many, a series of moments embroidered in the fabric of pop culture, and a legacy that continues to evoke smiles. Here's to the endless laughter, the shared joys, and the beautiful journey we embarked on together at Central Perk.
This is the Mr. Hands video, one of the hardest videos to watch on the internet, explained. The Mr. Hands video took place on July 2nd, 2005. It happened on a 40-acre farm in Washington. Kenneth Pinion and James Michael Tate lived right next to the farm in a trailer park and often visited the farm to engage in sexual intercourse with the horses inside. On the night of July 2nd, 2005, Kenneth Pinion and James Michael Tate and an unidentified man snuck into the farm to engage in their zoophilia. And much like their previous experiences, they went on to film this event. The video is short and it's around 40 seconds long. The video opens up in a very dark barn. You see a man with his pants down bending over, and next to him you see a very large horse. You then see another man in the shot moving the horse closer to the man bending over. He successfully does this and the horse walks further into the shot, and at this point you see the horse has a massive erection. I could assume you know where this is going, and I doubt you guys need me to explain it, but I will anyway. At this point in the video, the man in the shot grabs the horse's you-know-what and guides it into Kenneth Pinion's butt. And once the horse's you-know-what lined up with Kenneth's butt, it proceeds to pump away. It only took 2 or 3 pumps and the horse was done. This video will make you physically ill. The noises are just extremely uneasy to listen to. Of course you hear Kenneth Pinion grunt in pain after each thrust, but you also hear the noises of the horse doing its thing. It's just honestly extremely messed up, and once the horse finishes, that's where the video ends. But it's not where the story ends. Unlike the previous times these men did this, they soon realized something was wrong with Kenneth Pinion. At first, Kenneth did not want to go to the hospital due to the embarrassing nature of his injury. However, things took a turn and Kenneth was dropped off anonymously at the hospital. The man who brought him told the hospital staff he needed assistance and he then disappeared. Kenneth Pinion was then found dead in the emergency room at 45 years old. And his cause of death was said to be due to a perforated colon. Nobody knows how this video got leaked, but people suspect it was either Michael James Tate who recorded the video or law enforcement. I really don't recommend watching this video because, as I said earlier, it will literally just make you feel physically ill. Many people watch this video and record their reactions to see if they could finish it. But trust me, you don't want to see this. Hopefully the explanation was enough to drive your curiosity away.
"Mommy, please take me home." The last words Judah Morgan ever said to his foster mother. The next time she saw him, he was in a coffin. Jenna Hullett loved Judah like he was one of her own children, and she applied for custody of him at just 4 months old. Judah had been placed in foster care shortly after birth as he'd been born with the marijuana drug THC in his system. Jenna was the cousin of Judah's father, and she had a stable, loving home to provide for him, so she was granted custody, and he absolutely thrived in her care. The whole family absolutely loved Judah to bits, and he couldn't have been happier. However, when Judah was just 3 years old, he was ordered by Child Services to be placed back in the care of his biological parents, Mary and Alan. Judah had absolutely no idea that when he visited his parents that day, that he wouldn't be returning home with Jenna, and he begged her to take him with her. There was absolutely nothing that Jenna could do, and just 6 months later, little Judah was murdered by his parents after being starved and abused. Mary and Alan had forbidden Jenna from ever seeing Judah again, and they often kept him locked up in their cold, dark basement. On October 21st, 2021, 911 received a call from Mary, saying that Alan had got angry and hurt Judah. When emergency services arrived, they found Judah on the floor of one of the bedrooms wrapped in a blanket. He was battered and bruised, and it was clear to see that he'd been starved and abused for months. His cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Police actually managed to recover surveillance footage from inside the home, showing Alan abusing Judah on multiple occasions. He was seen on one occasion punching Judah 14 times, before lifting him up by the neck and dropping him on the floor. The next day he was again seen punching an already battered and bruised Judah 17 times. The couple were also seen leading Judah down into the basement before locking the door and leaving the house, and then arriving hours later and letting Judah back out of the basement. Alan and Mary were both arrested, and Alan pleaded guilty to the murder of Judah. He was sentenced in November 2022 to 70 years in prison. Mary is yet to be sentenced. Judah's loving foster family were present at the sentencing, and although nothing can ever bring Judah back, they are satisfied that his killer will likely die behind bars. Jenna is now advocating for Judah's law, which would give long-time caregivers the power to intervene if they feel that the child is in danger.
Police ignored this girl's cries for help about a stalker, even ignoring a huge bag of terrifying weapons. What happened next is horrifying. Gracie Spinks from Chesterfield was just 23 years old when she was brutally murdered. A well-liked and hard-working girl, her future was looking really bright until it would be taken away from her in the most hideous way. In the months leading up to her death, she'd become quite concerned. So concerned that she reached out to police for help. Michael Sellers was 35 and her ex-colleague. Now Gracie was very artistic, charismatic, and as I said, well-liked, and Michael became quite obsessed with her. 6 months prior, Gracie had declined Michael's romantic advances. It was then that he started to show even more worrying behaviour. In February 2021, Gracie rang police to tell them that she noticed Michael hanging around her stables. She would frequently go there alone to tend to her horse Paddy, and she obviously phoned police because she was very concerned. She warned police on the phone call that he could potentially kidnap someone. Now, police simply offered Michael words of advice and closed the inquiries. Worryingly, Michael had actually been dismissed from his workplace due to his concerning behaviour, and he had harassed a total of 8 women prior to Gracie. 4 of these women had raised concerns with their employer. Then a very disturbing find. Some dog walkers found a bag filled with weapons, and I can't obviously post it on TikTok, but if you just Google it, it really is horrifying. The people who found the bag were obviously concerned by it and they reported it to police. Despite the bag containing several knives, a hammer and an axe, the police treated it just simply as a case of found property. As I said, if you look at the picture, I have no idea why the police would not investigate that further. On the 18th of June 2021, something hideous was about to unfold. Gracie's mum last saw her at 7:30 a.m. when she left her home to go to the stables. As Gracie tended to her horse Paddy at Blue Lodge Farm in Duckmanton, Michael launched a brutal attack. He stabbed Gracie to death and fled the scene. She was found unconscious in the horse's field just after 8 a.m. and a witness saw a man running away. Initially, the emergency responders that arrived on the scene thought that Gracie had been kicked by her horse, but the true horrors would soon emerge. She was declared dead at 8:50 a.m. At 11 a.m, Michael was found dead in a nearby field. Now, Derbyshire police have recently apologised to Gracie's family after a jury at her inquest concluded she was unlawfully killed. The Gracie's Law petition was set up by her loved ones, and the aim of the petition was to raise awareness of the issues of stalking and the urgent need for government and police forces to take it more seriously. GracieSpinks.com has got a page where you can donate to this cause.
What? Nothing there, mate. Nothing there. What? There's nothing there.
This is Catherine Knight, also known as Australia's cannibal killer. And this is basically what she turned her husband into. Catherine was born in 1955 in New South Wales, Australia. She had a rough upbringing and was often sexually abused by members of her own family. One family member that never hurt her was her uncle, Oscar Knight. So when he committed suicide in 1969, things took a turn for Catherine and she went on a downward spiral. Catherine left school unable to read or write, but she soon landed her dream job, cutting up offal in an abattoir. She was soon promoted to deboning the carcasses and given her own set of knives, which she kept above her bed, saying that they'd come in handy if she ever needed them. In 1974, Catherine married a man called David Kelly, who she'd met at work. Catherine's mother actually warned David and said that Catherine had a screw loose and she'd probably end up killing him. She did attack David at one point with a frying pan while she was heavily pregnant, and he ended up with a fractured skull. She actually managed to convince David to drop the charges, and she went on to have 2 daughters with him. Shortly after having her first baby, she actually placed the newborn on a railway line, went into town, stole an axe from a shop, and then ran around town threatening to kill people. Thankfully, somebody saw the baby on the tracks and saved her just before a train was due. Soon after this incident, David left her and she was treated in a psychiatric hospital and then released. She then met David Saunders in 1988 and had her 3rd daughter. This relationship was again very, very violent, and she ended up hitting David with an iron in the face and stabbing him with a pair of scissors in the stomach. That relationship ended, and she actually ended up pregnant by another man and gave birth to a son named Eric in 1991. That relationship also ended as she was having an affair with John Price. John was a divorced father of 2, and he soon moved Catherine in along with her own children. In 1998, Catherine expressed her desire to marry John, but he refused, and this made Catherine really, really angry. She took some photos of items that John had stolen from work, and she got him fired from the job that he'd had for 17 years. John ended the relationship and took out a restraining order, but on February 29, 2000, while the children were at sleepover, Catherine went over to his house and let herself in through the front door. The next morning, blood was found on John's front door and the police were called. What they found inside was an absolute horror scene. John's headless body was sat at the kitchen table, and his head was found in a boiling pot that was still warm. He'd been skinned and his skin was hanging from a meat hook. Parts of his body had also been removed and cooked and prepared with vegetables, with the intentions of Catherine feeding him to his own children. Catherine stood trial in 2001, and she actually became hysterical upon hearing the details of John's death. She said she had no recollection of killing him, but she pleaded guilty, and she became the first woman in Australia to receive life without parole.
Thomas Husky, nicknamed the Zoo Man, is one of Tennessee's most infamous serial killers. But the thing is, he's never been convicted of murder. So let's go back to the beginning of this story. This is Thomas Husky. In the 1990s, he was working at the Knoxville Zoo. He loved animals, and his father also worked at the zoo. But what people didn't know is that after hours, Thomas Husky was hiring prostitutes and having sex with them right outside of the zoo gates. And some victims later came forward and said that Thomas Husky was actually bringing women into the zoo and having sex with them in a barn on property. Now, at first, Thomas wasn't a killer, but he was abusive. He was hiring these women, abusing them, choking them, and hurting them in horrific ways. Now, word spread throughout Knoxville pretty quickly amongst the local sex worker population that this Thomas Husky guy was abusive, and a lot of women refused to get in the car with him. But at the time, some women still did. They considered it just to be another danger of their job. But that brings us to Cahaba Lane, which is a dead-end street just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. It was here on Cahaba Lane where Thomas Husky started bringing these women to have sex with them. It was an isolated lane. It was a dead end. It was a wooded area filled and covered with trash. And it was out here in the isolated dark woods where Thomas would carry out some of his crimes. He would rape people, he would abuse them, he would physically abuse them. Terrible things. Well, eventually, one sex worker had enough. She went to the police and told them that this Thomas guy had hired her and he had really abused her badly. So a local detective, accompanied by the woman, headed out to Cahaba Lane to check out where she had been abused by Thomas. And lo and behold, they actually found Thomas out there at the end of the road, butt naked, with another woman. So seeing this as proof that the woman wasn't lying to him, the detective took Thomas into custody. He was charged with some crimes, but unfortunately, even though they talked to a number of sex workers from the area, none of them wanted to testify against Thomas. They didn't want to get involved. And this sadly only emboldened him. He still wanted to hire prostitutes, but now he was going to have to make sure that they couldn't talk to the police afterwards. It was October 1992, a very chilly day, when a local hunter who was walking out near Cahaba Lane stumbled across a dead body. The body belonged to a middle-aged female. He didn't know what to do, so he called the police, and from that point on, the police started their search in the woods surrounding Cahaba Lane. This is an actual picture that I took of Cahaba Lane when I visited, but when the police actually searched this area, they not only found one body, but they found a total of four women that had been murdered. One woman's body had been out there for so long that all that was left was skeletal remains, just bones. So thinking quickly, the detective who'd already arrested Thomas at that very lane for abusing a prostitute went back, got a search warrant, and headed over to Thomas's trailer. I'm going to continue this in part 2. You are not going to believe how this story ends. It is so crazy. And if you want to see the full documentary that I produced about these crimes, I visited all the locations from this story and spent time out there at night. The full video is premiering on my YouTube this evening. The link is in my TikTok bio.
These are videos humans were never meant to see. Okay, so have you ever heard the story about Sky King? Well, if you haven't, this man's name is Richard Russell, and he was a 29-year-old ground employee at a Seattle airport when he stole a commercial flight and went for an hour-long joyride before crashing the plane into an island. He was a lost and confused man, but he was a very good person. And the video I'm about to show you is the audio within the plane of Richard Russell talking to air traffic control. Keep in mind, he ended his life shortly after this.
Just flying the plane around, you seem comfortable with that?
Oh, hell yeah, it's a blast, man. I played video games before, so I know what I'm doing a little bit.
Okay, and you can see all the terrain around you? You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
Nah, everything's peachy clean. Just did a little circle around Rainier. It's beautiful. I think I got some gas to go check out the Olympics. And, yeah.
Okay, and Rich, do you know, are you able to tell what altitude you're at? No, I'm not taking you to any jets. I'm actually keeping you away from aircraft that are trying to land at SeaTac.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't want to screw with that. I'm glad you're not, screwing up everyone else's day on account of me. I'm down to 2,100. I started like 30-something.
Rich, you said you're at 2,100 pounds of fuel left?
Yeah, I don't know what the burn out is like on takeoff, but yeah, it's burned quite a bit faster than I expected.
There is the runway just off your right side in about a mile. Do you see that? That's McCord Field.
Oh, Oh man, those guys will rough me up if I try landing there. I think I might mess something up there too. I wouldn't want to do that. Hopefully, they probably got anti-aircraft.
No, they don't have any of that stuff. We're just trying to find a place for you to land safely.
Yeah, not quite ready to bring it down just yet, but holy smokes, I gotta stop looking at the fuel because it's going down quick.
And I think you might have some questions. Rich, I've got a pilot on with us, and if you got any questions, you can ask him now. 400's apparently the grounds crewman with Horizon, I guess. And right now he's just flying around, and he just needs some help controlling his aircraft.
Very good. Nah, I don't need that much help. I played some video games before. I would like to figure out how to get this cabin altitude. Like, I know where the box is. I would like to get some, make it pressurized or something so I'm not so lightheaded.
Rich, what's your altitude?
Yeah, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the autopilot. I'm just kind of hand flying right now.
This woman screamed, "I don't want to die," as she was dragged to her death in a horrifying theme park incident. Kelty Byrne was a Canadian student animal trainer and competitive swimmer. She was working at Sealand of the Pacific to earn extra money, and this involved being trained to work with orcas, otherwise known as killer whales. In controversial theme parks such as Sealand of the Pacific and SeaWorld, huge animals are either bred in captivity or traumatically captured and ripped apart from their families and natural habitats for humans' entertainment. On February the 20th, 1991, Kelty was working a shift and 3 whales were in one of the pools, including the infamous Tilikum. In a horrific turn of events, Kelty accidentally slipped and fell into the whale pool and attempted to grab onto the edge and save herself. However, before she could do so, she was grabbed by one of the whales that dragged her into the pool. The 3 whales then began throwing Kelty around, with many speculating that they may have simply thought this was a game. Others theorised that the whales were so traumatised and angered by their lives in tiny little pools that they took it out on Kelty. She was dragged under the water and then back up, screaming, "I don't want to die." After this horrific ordeal, she eventually drowned. It's reported that she was absolutely covered in bruises, was completely battered, and also covered in teeth marks. If I didn't know this was a true crime case, I would think it was a disturbing horror film. On the morning of the 7th of October 2022, a barefoot woman was running around Excelsior Springs, Missouri, bashing on people's doors. Witnesses describe her looking like she came straight from a horror film and she was calling for help. She'd been beaten, held captive, and SA'd for weeks. The woman was a shocking sight. She was covered in injuries and was wearing a bin bag. Disturbingly, she was gasping for breath as she had a very tight metal collar locked round her neck. It was a nurse who opened the door to her and let her come in. The nurse started to call police, and at this point the woman panicked. She warned her that the captor would kill her and claimed that he had killed her 2 friends. When police got there, the woman explained that a man called Timothy had captured her the month prior. He'd been holding her hostage this whole time. She said he'd been keeping her locked in the basement and had been SAing her. Disturbingly, she told police that he actually had a young son who lived at the house with him. When Timothy had taken his young son to school the one day, she used it as her opportunity to escape. Police made their way to the home of 39-year-old Timothy Haslett Jr. and found the property did in fact have a basement like the woman described. Timothy was arrested and is facing 9 charges, including first-degree kidnapping. He's being held on a $3 million bond and faces 5 life sentences. Before his arrest, police were actually called to his address 3 times. Twice they were asked to do welfare checks, and this was from an employer and also family members. Police have searched his home with cadaver dogs and they haven't yet released what they know.